The gym on the east side of Atlanta was always busy in the evenings. The air smelled of sweat and determination. Punching bags swung, shoes squeaked on the mat, and music played low in the background. People came here to forget their troubles and to test their limits. Some came to lose weight, others to learn how to fight, and a few came simply to feel strong for a little while. Among the regulars was a man named Calvin. He was an MMA trainer, tall and muscular, with a sharp confidence that filled every corner of the room. His students respected him, but they also feared his temper. Calvin loved to show off his power, especially when new faces came in. He was known for being tough, loud, and always the center of attention. If someone landed a good punch in training, Calvin would grin and hit back harder just to remind everyone who was in charge. But not everyone in the gym was there to fight. Late every evening, after most people had left, a janitor named Marcus began his shift. He was a quiet man in his late 30s with calm brown eyes and a kind smile. His job was simple: to keep the gym clean. He mopped the floors, wiped down the machines, and made sure everything was ready for the next day. Marcus didn't talk much, but everyone noticed that he always greeted people politely and never complained, no matter how messy the place got. Calvin, however, rarely paid attention to him. To Calvin, Marcus was just the janitor. He never thought about the man behind the broom. Sometimes, when Calvin stayed late to train, he would throw his towel on the floor and expect Marcus to pick it up. Marcus never said a word. He just smiled and did his work. One Friday night, the gym was extra crowded. Calvin was showing off some new moves to a small group of trainees. They admired him, the way he moved, his strength, and his confidence. Calvin liked that feeling. It made him feel important. As the night went on, the trainees gathered around the ring, laughing and joking while Calvin demonstrated techniques. Marcus was cleaning near the corner of the ring, sweeping up bits of tape and wiping sweat off the mats. He worked quietly, trying not to disturb the group. But Calvin noticed him out of the corner of his eye. For some reason, seeing Marcus working while everyone else was training gave Calvin an idea. He smirked, looked at his students, and said loudly, "Hey, look at Marcus over there. He's been watching us for weeks. Maybe he wants a lesson too." Everyone chuckled. Marcus paused his sweeping and looked up, unsure what to say. "No, sir," he said softly, smiling a little. "I'm just doing my job." But Calvin wasn't done. He enjoyed being the center of attention, and the laughter of the group encouraged him. "Come on, man," he said. "You're always around fighters. Don't you ever want to throw a punch?" The students laughed again, not out of cruelty, but because they followed Calvin's lead. Marcus shook his head. "Not anymore," he replied politely. "Those days are behind me." Calvin raised an eyebrow. "Oh, so you used to fight?" His tone was teasing, but his eyes showed curiosity. Marcus didn't want to get into it. He'd left that part of his life behind. "A long time ago," he said quietly. One of the trainees, a young man named Rick, whispered something to Calvin. "I think he used to box, coach. My cousin told me." Calvin laughed. "Really? The janitor used to box?" He turned to Marcus again. "Is that true?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked down at the floor, then gave a small nod. "A long time ago," he repeated. Calvin clapped his hands together and grinned. "Then come on. Let's see what you remember. Just one round, friendly. No pressure." The group started cheering. Some chanted Marcus's name playfully, while others laughed, expecting a short and funny match. Marcus didn't like being the center of attention. He just wanted to clean the gym and go home. But Calvin kept talking, encouraging, teasing, and smiling. He made it sound harmless. Finally, Marcus sighed. He could see that Calvin wouldn't let it go. He carefully placed his mop to the side and said, "All right. Just one round. Nothing serious." Everyone clapped and cheered. Calvin tossed him a pair of gloves. Marcus caught them, looking at them for a moment before putting them on. His hands still fit perfectly inside. The soft leather brought back memories of long hours in small gyms, of training until his arms shook, and of matches where he learned that patience mattered more than pride. He stepped into the ring slowly, his shoes squeaking on the mat. Calvin bounced on his toes, light and confident. "Don't worry," Calvin said with a grin. "I'll go easy." Marcus smiled faintly. "I'm sure you will." The students gathered around the ring, holding their phones and whispering to each other. Some joked that it would be over in seconds. Others said Marcus looked too calm to be afraid. The bell rang, just a small tap on a metal stool, and Calvin moved forward. His movements were quick, sharp, and practiced. He jabbed lightly, testing the air, showing off for the crowd. Marcus didn't move much. He just stood still, watching, breathing slowly. His eyes followed Calvin's shoulders, not his fists. Calvin circled him, throwing light punches that didn't connect. "Come on, show me something," he said with a smile. Marcus still didn't react. He waited. He'd spent years learning that the best fighters didn't rush. They observed. They understood. One of the trainees shouted, "Hit him, coach!" Calvin chuckled and stepped in closer. Marcus could feel the air shift. He could read Calvin's rhythm, the way his feet landed, the small sound his shoes made when he moved forward. It was all familiar, like hearing a song he hadn't heard in years but still remembered every beat of. Calvin swung a bit harder this time, still playful, but faster than before. Marcus stepped back slightly, his body loose and steady. His face showed no anger, just calm focus. The group around the ring had gone quieter now. They could sense something in Marcus's stillness, something steady and controlled. Calvin threw another quick jab. Marcus moved to the side, barely an inch. His movement so small that it almost looked like he didn't move at all. He didn't throw any punches back. He just observed. Minutes passed like that. Calvin attacking, Marcus avoiding, the air growing heavier. It was no longer funny to watch. People stopped laughing. They could see the difference between showmanship and skill. Calvin started to breathe harder, his confidence shifting slightly. He hadn't expected this. He smiled again, trying to keep the mood light. "You're good at dodging," he said. Marcus nodded. "You're good at moving," he replied. His voice was calm, almost friendly. Then Calvin came in again, a little faster. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. He noticed a small gap in Calvin's stance. The same kind of mistake he used to see in younger fighters who relied too much on power. But Marcus didn't strike. He just took a deep breath and waited. Finally, Calvin stepped back, grinning and wiping sweat from his forehead. "You've still got some moves," he said. "But I'm just warming up," Marcus smiled. "That's good," he said quietly. "Warming up keeps you sharp." The group laughed nervously. They weren't sure who was in control anymore. Calvin was stronger, faster, and younger, but Marcus had something different, a sense of calm that filled the whole room. As the round went on, Marcus's movement stayed light and smooth. He wasn't fighting, he was flowing. Every time Calvin advanced, Marcus adjusted just enough to stay out of reach. It wasn't about strength. It was about timing. Years of discipline and patience were guiding every step. People began to whisper among themselves. "He's actually good," one said. "Really good?" Calvin heard it too. It pushed him to try harder. He wanted to prove himself again, to show he was the best in the room. He moved quicker now, throwing combinations, but Marcus's calm didn't break. He stayed steady like water moving around a rock. The room grew hotter. Sweat rolled down Calvin's face. Marcus breathed evenly, his chest rising and falling at the same calm rhythm. Calvin finally paused, smiling wide. "You sure you haven't been training behind my back?" he said between breaths. Marcus shook his head. "Just cleaning," he said simply. The group chuckled, but this time it was out of respect. There was something quietly powerful about the janitor, something no one had seen before. When the timer went off, the round ended. Calvin lowered his gloves and laughed, breathing heavily. "You got some skills, man. You fooled me there." Marcus removed his gloves slowly. "You did good too," he said politely. "You've got strong technique," Calvin nodded. "Maybe next time you should join us for real training," he said. Marcus smiled and picked up his mop again. "Maybe," he said softly. "But I think I'll stick to cleaning for now." Calvin chuckled and gave him a friendly nod before stepping out of the ring. The students clapped lightly, not because they had seen a big fight, but because they had witnessed something meaningful, quiet skill and humility in its purest form. As Marcus went back to mopping the floor, the gym returned to its usual rhythm. But something had changed. The laughter had turned to respect. Calvin looked at Marcus differently now, not as a janitor, but as someone who carried wisdom in silence. That night, as the lights dimmed and everyone left, Marcus continued cleaning. The sound of the mop sliding across the floor echoed in the empty gym. He smiled to himself, thinking of how life had come full circle, from boxing gloves to cleaning cloths, from the roar of crowds to the quiet peace of solitude. He didn't miss the ring, but he was glad, just for one moment, to remember who he used to be. The next evening, the gym felt different. People were still training, punching bags still swung from the ceiling, and the music still played. But the air carried something new, a quiet respect. News of what happened between Marcus and Calvin had spread quickly. It wasn't gossip in a cruel way. It was more like a story people told in amazement. "Did you hear what happened yesterday?" one trainee whispered to another. Marcus used to be a boxer. "He moved like water, man. Coach couldn't even touch him." At first, Calvin didn't like how everyone talked about it. He wasn't angry, but he felt embarrassed. He had thought it would be a light-hearted joke, something funny to break the evening's routine. Instead, it had turned into a lesson, one that he hadn't expected to learn. But deep down, he knew he deserved it. Marcus, on the other hand, didn't act any differently. He showed up as usual, wearing his same blue uniform and carrying his cleaning cart. He didn't talk about what happened. He didn't brag or try to get attention. He just smiled politely when people greeted him and kept doing his job. When Calvin saw Marcus again that evening, he hesitated before speaking. For the first time, he didn't see him as the janitor. He saw him as a man who carried something strong inside, not just strength of body, but strength of character. Calvin approached him while Marcus was wiping down the mirrors. "Hey, Marcus," he said, his voice softer than usual. Marcus turned, surprised by the gentle tone. "Evening, Calvin," he said. Calvin rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "About last night. I just wanted to say sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I shouldn't have pushed you like that." Marcus smiled warmly. "It's all right," he said. "You didn't mean harm. Sometimes we learn things in funny ways," Calvin chuckled. "Yeah," he said. "Like learning not to underestimate a man with a mop." They both laughed quietly. The tension melted away. For the first time, they spoke not as coach and janitor, but as equals. After that day, something interesting began to happen. Calvin started asking Marcus small questions about boxing, not for competition, but for understanding. "How did you stay so calm in the ring?" he asked one evening. Marcus looked thoughtful. "You don't fight with anger," he said softly. "You fight with patience. The moment you lose your calm, you lose control. A fight is like a storm. The one who stays still inside wins." Those words stayed with Calvin for a long time. He began to notice how often he trained with tension, always trying to prove something, always trying to be better than everyone else. But Marcus's calmness had shown him another kind of strength. Over the next few weeks, Calvin and Marcus became friends. When the gym got quiet late at night, they would sit by the ring and talk. Marcus shared small stories from his past. How he used to train at a neighborhood boxing club when he was younger. How his coach taught him discipline and kindness, and how life eventually led him to leave fighting behind after a family hardship. Calvin listened with genuine interest. "So you just walked away?" he asked one night. Marcus nodded. "I had to. My family needed me more than the ring did. I realized winning a fight doesn't mean much if you lose yourself." Calvin was quiet for a moment. Those words touched him. He had spent years chasing success, titles, and recognition. He had forgotten why he started in the first place. To feel strong and confident, not proud or arrogant. Soon the other trainers began noticing a change in Calvin. He no longer shouted at students when they made mistakes. Instead, he guided them patiently, explaining each move with care. When someone was struggling, he offered encouragement instead of criticism. The gym's atmosphere started to shift too. It became warmer, friendlier, more welcoming. Marcus's quiet wisdom had rippled through everyone. One evening, a young man named Eric joined the gym. He was shy, thin, and clearly nervous. Calvin welcomed him kindly and introduced him to Marcus, who was sweeping the floor nearby. "Eric, meet Marcus," Calvin said. "He's been here longer than anyone. If you ever need advice, talk to him." Marcus smiled. "Welcome, young man. You'll do fine here," he said. Eric looked surprised. "You train too?" he asked. Marcus laughed softly. "Not anymore," he replied. "But I've learned a few things from life. Training isn't just about fists. It's about the heart." That simple line made Eric smile, and soon he felt comfortable coming to the gym every day. Over time, he grew stronger and more confident. Calvin often caught Marcus giving him small pointers when no one was watching, adjusting his stance, teaching him how to breathe, how to stay calm. It was a quiet kind of mentorship, one that came from kindness rather than pride. Months passed, and the gym continued to grow in reputation. But now, people didn't just come for the training. They came for the atmosphere, the sense of respect and unity that filled the place. Calvin knew deep down that it all started because of one man who never asked for credit. One night, the gym was empty except for Calvin and Marcus. The city outside was quiet, and the sound of rain tapped softly against the windows. Calvin sat on the edge of the ring, wrapping his hands after a long training session. Marcus was cleaning near the corner. "Marcus," Calvin said suddenly, "do you ever miss it?" "The fighting, I mean." Marcus paused, thinking. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Not the punches or the pain, but the feeling of focus, the peace that comes when everything else disappears and it's just you in the moment." Calvin nodded. "Yeah, I get that." He hesitated before adding, "You know, you could still teach. You've got more to offer than most of us." Marcus smiled, shaking his head. "I'm happy where I am. Not everyone's meant to stand in the spotlight. Some people do their best work in the quiet." Calvin didn't argue. He understood now. Strength wasn't about showing off. It was about character, patience, and respect. Over time, Marcus's influence spread even further. The trainees started helping him clean after sessions. It wasn't out of pity. It was out of gratitude. They enjoyed his company and wanted to show appreciation. Marcus tried to refuse at first, but they insisted. "You help us every day, Marcus," one of them said. "Let us help you for a change." It became a small tradition. Every Friday night after training, everyone stayed back a little longer to tidy up the gym together. They laughed, shared stories, and grew closer as a team. The gym felt like a family now. One day, a local reporter came by to write about the gym's growing popularity. She interviewed Calvin, asking about the secret behind the friendly environment. Calvin smiled and said, "Our best teacher isn't even on the schedule." When the article was published, it mentioned Marcus, the quiet janitor who reminded everyone what real strength looks like. The story touched many hearts. People began stopping by just to meet him, to shake his hand and to thank him for the lesson his life had become. Marcus never took credit. He always said, "I just do my job." But deep down he felt proud, not because of fame, but because kindness had finally been noticed. One evening, Calvin arranged a small surprise for Marcus. The whole gym gathered around the ring. Marcus walked in, holding his mop as usual, confused by the crowd. "What's going on?" he asked. Calvin smiled and stepped forward, holding a small plaque. "Marcus, we wanted to thank you for everything you've done, for keeping this place clean, for keeping our hearts humble, and for teaching us what real discipline means." The plaque read, "To Marcus, the heart of our gym." Everyone clapped. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, his eyes misty. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. I don't know what to say," he whispered. Calvin placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just say you'll stay with us," he said with a grin. Marcus laughed softly, his eyes shining. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. That night, the gym was filled with laughter, music, and warmth. People trained, talked, and shared food. Marcus watched them all with quiet happiness. For the first time in years, he felt that sense of belonging again, the same peace he used to feel in the ring, but now in a gentler form. Later, when everyone had gone home, Marcus stayed behind to finish cleaning. Calvin stayed too, helping him fold towels and mop the last bit of floor. "You know," Calvin said, "I used to think strength was all about power, but you taught me it's about peace. I owe you for that." Marcus looked at him and smiled. "No, you don't owe me. You just had to see it for yourself," Calvin nodded slowly. "Yeah, I see it now." They finished cleaning in silence. The rain outside had stopped and the night was calm. Marcus looked around the empty gym, the same place where everything had changed, and felt grateful. He picked up his mop, turned off the lights, and whispered quietly to himself, "Sometimes life puts you in the right place, even when you don't understand why." From that night on, Marcus became more than just the janitor. He became the soul of the gym, a reminder to everyone that true greatness doesn't always wear gloves or chase trophies. Sometimes it sweeps the floor with quiet pride, teaching lessons without ever trying to. And every time someone new joined the gym, Calvin would point toward Marcus and say, "That man right there, he's the reason we're all better than we used to be." Marcus would just laugh and shake his head, but deep down, he knew it was true. His calm spirit had turned a simple gym into a place of respect, humility, and friendship. And in that peaceful silence at the end of each day, He found something far greater than victory. He found meaning.